Good morning, friends, and welcome to worship at Unity Church. Welcome to this time we set aside each week to align our lives more closely to integrity, service, and joy. This morning, we worship both in person and online, a congregation gathered in time rather than a single place. May we all enter into worship fully, not held back by fear or distraction or the unfamiliarity of new ways. Welcome whatever rises in your spirit during this time we share. If this is your first time attending a service, we'd invite you to complete a visitor card available in the pews or online, and we can use that information to provide you with more about this church and all we do here. If you're visiting, we also invite you to attend a Finding Yourself at Unity conversation each Sunday that focuses on a different topic about Unity Church. Today's topic is worship and the liturgical year. After the service today, Brian and I look forward to greeting those of you present in person. Those of you joining online are invited to gather for a Zoom coffee hour. And then just a word about the difficulty of this time we find ourselves in as a church, as a nation. Unity Church has as its statement of values, says that as a church we honor the ambiguity and uncertainty in the search for greater truth, meaning, and equity. And if we've ever found ourselves in a time where there is ambiguity and uncertainty, it is confronting us every day, as each day all of us individually have to assess how we will move through that day, given all the variables that have risen in our lives as a result of the pandemic. We want you to know that all of us who serve you on the staff of this church are doing ongoing assessments of how best to have the church function during uncertainty and ambiguity. We gather probably much of the same information that you do, assess what that means in terms of all the things we do as a church, make adjustments, set some things back, carry some things forward. I want to be sure you know that we have multiple options for how we will do virtually anything here at church, and we're prepared to keep shifting among those options as circumstances would warrant. At the same time, because we are a large community and a diverse community, we cannot mandate one way of moving through this time for all of you, to tell you how to make your choices about how you participate in church during this time. So we hope that you're putting your own well-being, your physical, your emotional, your spiritual well-being as primary, and then discerning what is best for your best interests of your well-being for how you will participate in church. And recognize that you may be participating differently from what you ordinarily would as you honor the protection of your own well-being. In times of uncertainty and ambiguity, the spiritual strength we can most draw on is that of faith, not faith as is often misunderstood as a belief in a particular tenet or concept, but faith as trust, as confidence in oneself, in one's community, in whatever one might call God or the larger mystery that surrounds us. So long as we make our choices guided by the clarity that faith will give us for what matters most, we can trust that we're on a good path. And now let us move into worship with the ringing of the bell.
Good morning, everyone. I've picked 3 songs today from the Justice Choir songbook. That's a songbook that I'm involved in editing of new and old songs to sing for social and environmental justice. So today, you're singing with me, and these are songs that you might not know the words for, but they're meant to be picked up pretty quickly. So you'll struggle at first, but you'll pick them up. And if you don't, when you get home, you can look them up. So the first song is an old one. This is an African-American spiritual that became a big part of the civil rights movement. And you feel free to harmonize or as we go. So it starts, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round. Turn me round, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, marching up to freedom land. Try it with me, ready? And ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let my worries turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let my worries turn me round. I'm gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, marching up to freedom land. ain't gonna let no hatred turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me round. I'm gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on a-walking, keep on a-talking, marching up to freedom land. Thank you, everyone.
Unity began a congregation-wide initiative with the IDI, or the Intercultural Development Inventory. You might have taken it, but if not, it is a 50-question online survey, it takes about 20 minutes to do, that assesses your capability, as the company who devised it said, to shift cultural perspective and adapt your behavior to cultural differences and commonalities. The tool is in over 30 countries around the world. It's used by the likes of Target and Harley-Davidson and the US Supreme Court and the Minnesota Supreme Court and the Air Force Academy and dozens of higher ed institutions like the U. The IDI feels a little bit like, to me, a multiple choice test. But you don't get a letter grade for doing a good job. After answering those 50 questions, you are scored, but the score places you on a continuum of cultural fluency, in particular how you see and work with differences between yourself and others. At one end of the continuum, you have denial, which means you simply don't see differences between yourself and others. It's not where you want to be. At the opposite end of the continuum is adaptation, meaning you can bridge the differences between yourself and others. And that is where you want to be, in that culturally fluent adaptation column. As a Unity member, active in this congregation that is oriented and moving towards greater racial healing and justice, I was hoping I would end up in that adaptation column. And yes, I was hoping for a gold star along the way. Where I wound up is in a different column altogether, right in the middle, between denial and adaptation. That column is called minimization, which means I de-emphasize, I minimize the differences between me and other groups or individuals who are not like me. Again, there was no letter grade handed out for being in the minimization category, but it felt like a solid C- on my journey towards being the person I aspire to be. I clearly had work to do. So, to the bookstore I went. Ibrahim Kendi, Eddie Glaude, Zora Neale Hurston, James Baldwin, Cao Yang, Colson Whitehead, Maya Angelou, Dana Smith, and others. Fiction, nonfiction, poetry, memoir, book after book, trying to open myself to other lived realities that are so different from my own. About a year later, I took the IDI again, feeling good about my progress. Guess what? Minimization again. I had not budged an inch. I downplay the differences between me and you. Whether your skin is a different color than mine, whether you have physical abilities that are different from mine, if you're much older, much younger, if your gender expression is different than mine, your life is not that different from mine, right? Right? On this day before the MLK holiday, I wonder how I will begin to really see other people in all the richness of their lives, their struggles, their aspirations, their ideas, their challenges, and in particular, the injustices they face and have faced and will face. What will it take for me to see you as you are and not as I am? Come, let us worship together.
Please rise in body or spirit for our first hymn. Lift every voice and sing. Please be seated as we move into silence. Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the center of this and every sacred community. This morning, we stand on the homelands of the Dakota and Ojibwa nations. We honor with gratitude the people who have stewarded the land throughout the generations and their ongoing contributions to this region. We confess the ongoing injustices that we have committed against the Dakota and Ojibwa nations, and we intend to interrupt this legacy, beginning with acts of healing and honest storytelling about this place. This morning, we stand at the side of parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, with those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental disability or addiction. We pray for our neighbors in prison, those who care for family members in ill health, those who are struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly and with courage and curiosity face their final days, and by those who rise above heartbreak to challenge oppression in all its forms. This morning we pray for those in harm's way, for the wisdom and strength of the leaders of the world, and for the people of this courageous congregation, as together we live into our longing to embody and help to build the beloved community. This morning we especially lift up these. We hold Lisa Carlson in our hearts as she and her family celebrate the life and mourn the death of her father, Roy Towner Carlson, also known as Chip, of Cheyenne, Wyoming. He was 84, loved history, and authored 3 biographies of Tom Horn. We extend our sympathies to Sylvia Elrod, whose partner Jack Stewart died peacefully on Tuesday, surrounded by family and close friends. Jack was a part of Temple Israel and dearly loved by many. His son will be holding a Zoom remembrance service. Today we celebrate the arrival of 2 more Redeemers born last Sunday. George Phillips Parker was born January 9th to parents Eve Hagee and Henry Parker. Mom, Dad, and baby George are home, healthy and happily getting to know one another. And of course, grandparents Therese Sex and Dave Hagee and Ann and Bill Parker could not be more thrilled. And Sheila and Jamie Bosk announced the arrival of their newest family member, Bray Charlie Bosk, also born last Sunday. Everyone is home, doing well. The family reports that Bray gives the best snuggles, and Sheila, Jamie, and little Juniper are also in love. This morning we stand in compassionate solidarity with our neighbors here at home and all around the world. May they and we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. Now I invite you to speak aloud or hold in the silent sanctuary of your hearts the names of those you wish to lift up today in worship. Let us pray. Creator Spirit, Spirit of justice and reconciliation. As today we recall one who dreamed boldly of justice and challenged us to live into that dream, we come seeking a new dream, a new spirit for ourselves. A dream that would so draw us into the future that we could not remain silent nor still. A dream that could lift us out of our present uncertainty and fear into hope and courage. May we be made restless where we have dreamed too small. May we be drawn back to dreaming where our dreams have grown stale. May we be bold in sharing our dreams, even when they are met with dismissal and disbelief. Spirit of visions, Spirit of justice, send us your dream for a just world. Send us an irresistible dream of a just world. And breathe into us the courage to make that dream real. Amen.
So another song from the Justice Choir Songbook. This is called We're Gonna Shine. It is a call and response song, or a back and forth, which you can then maybe find a partner to sing with. So everything I sing, you sing back. We're gonna shine. We're gonna shine. Every day. Anytime. When we're strong. When we're kind, we're gonna shine. We're gonna shine. So Tom wrote this song, and he often sings it at kindergarten and elementary classrooms. And the kids and him would write verses together each time. So I'll sing one verse that the kids wrote in a kindergarten classroom, and then the second verse I'm going to sing, they came up with it one time when he had to sing this on 9/11, on the actual morning of 9/11. So, let's see. We're gonna shine. We're gonna shine. Every day. Anytime. When we're strong, when we're kind, we're gonna shine, we're gonna shine. The sun comes out and says hello to every living creature, the frogs and chicks and walking sticks, and every kid and teacher. We're gonna shine, we're gonna shine. every day, anytime, when we're strong, when we're kind, we're gonna shine, we're gonna shine. At this time I feel so sad, angry and confused. Hate will try to find my heart, but love is what I'll choose. We're gonna shine, we're gonna shine, every day, anytime, when we're strong, when we're kind, we're gonna shine, 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 we're gonna shine.
Good morning. Good morning to families and kids that are here in the sanctuary, and also to those of you who are joining us at home. I can't invite you up today, but I do invite you to listen to the story that I'm going to tell you about a lion. Now, this is a lion that many of you will recognize, not just from movies and books, but possibly in yourselves. See, this lion was raised by proud parents who told him, "You are the king of the jungle." And he took this into his head, and he believed all should bow down to him with respect, that he need only care for himself and that he takes what he wants. And so as a young lion, this is the way he lives, not really caring for others, only thinking about his own needs and demanding that people treat him with respect. But you know, over time, this isn't really a great life because he doesn't have any friends. And he finds himself to live kind of alone. And being that he has no one else to talk to, he talks to himself and he says to himself, "I am the king. I am strong. I am brave." And he tells himself these stories. But again, it is to no one. He does not know how to have friends. He does not know how to care for others. He doesn't know how to reach out. He tries to force people to be his friend. "You, be my friend. You, come on, be my friend." And of course, this doesn't work. They run from him. And in fact, over time, he even starts to push away family. Now, really, he feels bad about this. He feels terrible. He's miserable and alone. But of course, this comes out as being cranky, ornery, and mean. He yells at people. He says awful things. And he continues only to think for himself. But in the night, as it begins to become dark, he sees all the other creatures of the forest gathering in their packs or their herds with their families and heading off together to spend that night together in warmth and security. And he is alone. And he's afraid. The dark scares him, and so he spends his night afraid of every sound and every shadow, sleepless. One day, he is sleeping, middle of the day, because remember, he gets no sleep at night. He's ornery and cranky, and he is awakened by a group of people who are walking through his forest. Now, this happens to be 3 people who are coming through his forest. There is a 14-year-old girl, there is a scarecrow, and there is a tin man. I can't tell you that whole story here today, but it's a great story. Anyway, they come through the forest and they startle the lion, who jumps up. Startled, he's upset, and he roars, and he scares them, and they jump back. And he sees that there's a little dog, just a tiny little dog that's with them. And being that he's a bully, he goes after the dog. And to his shock, the dog does not back down. This tiny little dog that weighs all of 10 pounds, has tiny little mouth and tiny teeth, goes after him. Why? Because this dog is fiercely loyal. These are his people he's with, and he has strength because he knows he must protect them. And the lion falls apart, right? The lion falls apart and says, he bit me, he bit me. And this girl comes forward. This girl, now, what's her name? Dorothy. Dorothy comes forward and says, my goodness, what a fuss you're making. Why, of course, when you attack poor defenseless people, you're going to have something like this. Yes, but he bit me. And she says, nonsense. We were just minding our own business coming through the woods when you attacked us. And she takes him on, and she's mad at him. But then she starts to have a little compassion for him because he's crying and he's whimpering and he's just a mess. And she says, come on, you're okay, you're okay. We're on a journey. In fact, we're off to see the wizard. And she goes on to explain that the scarecrow is going off looking for a brain because he doesn't think he's smart. And the Tin Man is looking for a heart because he's tired of feeling empty. And she just wants to feel loved and secure. She wants to go home. And they believe that if they go to the Emerald City and see the wizard will give them these things. Well, the lion has a moment of hope and says, if I went with you, could you possibly have the wizard grant me what I need? Courage. And there it is, courage. He is hoping that he can be granted magically courage. And so the four go off, and they go off to the Emerald City, and they stand in front of the wizard, and they ask the wizard, can you give us these things that we really need? But the wizard, who appears to them as a scary, horrible, and mean guy, says, how dare you come to me and ask me these things? You must earn these things. And they're crestfallen. And he says, not only does he say he can't give them these things, he says, you must earn these by going off, and you must find the wicked witch who is challenging the entire city. You must vanquish her, and you must bring me back her broom. Well, this is frightening, right? And this frightens no one more than the lion, because this is a scary thing they are asked to do. And he's never been any good when he's been scared. But something has happened to him. Something has happened to him on this journey, because he's been traveling with, for his first time, people he might call friends. They've been sharing dreams. They've been doing this together, and he feels something for them. And so actually there's something in him that's going, maybe, and it's a good thing, because they no sooner leave the wizard than the wicked witch abducts Dorothy and locks her in her castle. What are they going to do? Well, here's where the scarecrow, the supposedly brainless scarecrow, comes up with a great plan. The supposedly heartless Tin Man exhorts them and says, we have to save Dorothy. And the lion steps forward and he leads them to the witch's castle. And he sneaks in. And he stands before the guards and he says, come on, I'll fight you. Who's first? I'll fight you one at a time. I'll fight you two at a time. I'll fight you with one paw behind my back. I'll fight you on one foot. Come on. And with this attitude, they scare the guards away. They find Dorothy. They vanquish the witch. They take her broom and they go back to the wizard and they said, we have the broom. But the wizard says, I can't grant you these things. He says to the lion, I cannot give you courage. But before the lion can get too sad about this, the wizard says, I can't give it to you, but you have more courage than anyone could imagine. And he pins a medal on him to celebrate the courage that he has shown. And the lion thinks about this and thinks, yeah, I did. I stood up. Think of the things that I did. Why did I do that? And he realizes he did it because he finally had this feeling of He wanted to do something for his friends. He had to. He was called, and that courage appeared. And we know this, right? We know that we are not always feeling brave, but when we know that we stand in solidarity, when we have each other's back, when we are supported, we can be those courageous lions.
Your financial support of the church is an expression of the promises we make to each other and the world. Your contributions enable us to do the work we've pledged to do within our church community and beyond the walls of the church. Each Sunday, the majority of our offering is passed on to community partners with whom we share common cause. If you'd like to nominate an organization to receive our offering, you can find a form to do so on the church's website. Today, the larger portion of our offering will be shared with Freedom School, a free program for students in grades K through 8, held each summer in the Rondo Education Complex that's located right here in our church's neighborhood. This collection helps provide nutritious meals, addresses pandemic learning losses, and provides resources for lessons, field trips, and fun. Would the ushers please come forward? Please give as generously as you can, and know that we dedicate ourselves and these offerings to doing the greater work of the church, which is weaving a fabric of love we call community.
Thank you, Ahmed. I would like to take you along with me into a place that few have ever gone before, and that is the men's locker room at the downtown YMCA. Actually, the shower room of the locker room. This is a few years ago, and I was in the shower, washing my feet, bent over, and noticed that the gentleman right next to me was doing the same thing, African-American man. And as I'm washing my feet, I glanced over and saw that the soles of his feet were the same color as mine. The palms of his hands were the same color as mine. And I was shocked and tried not to stare. That would be so awkward. You're standing in the shower staring at another guy. But it was a moment that still stays with me. And I thought at that time, how have I lived this long and not known this? That a person of color, this African American, that our palms are the same color, soles of our feet are the same color. How have I missed that? I make so many assumptions, consciously and unconsciously, about a person based on skin color, which is the very definition of racism. And I have to own this. This is my racism. And for the umpteenth time, here it was revealed to me what a flimsy house of cards that is when skin color doesn't even cover the whole body. On one hand, that contributed to my tendency to minimalize the differences between persons that are not looking like me. Look, even parts of our bodies are the same color. But if that were the case, if skin color didn't matter in this world, in this country, in this community, in this century, Philando Castile would still be serving lunches to St. Paul kids. I profit so much from having the skin color that I have in this country. The chances for me having one outcome versus another outcome, if I'm stopped for a brake light that's out, are profound. My kids have a better chance at academic performance based on their skin color in Minneapolis public schools than if they were black. This is the world we live in. One of Unity's end statements reads, "We know each other in our fullness and create an ever-widening circle of belonging for all people. So here is my fullness," which is to say my amazing incompleteness on this journey towards widening the circle. I say this to you with some fear, frankly. For a middle-aged white male to talk about racism, admit to my own racism, feels like there's nothing but a minefield in front of me. What do I have to offer? I don't want to misstep. I don't want anything to explode in anybody's face. And yet, I don't wish to stay in my own fear, in my own practice of minimizing these important differences and finding ways to bridge them. I don't want to de-emphasize your lived experience and elevate mine to the universal. So how do I take my next step? I don't have a clear path, let me tell you. Only the intention to move and to step, to try to find and summon the courage to take myself out of the center of things and put someone else there, their story, their hopes, their life, even though the soles of our feet may be the same color. How much I have to learn, how far I have to go. A few months ago, a composer asked me to write the lyrics for a new piece of choral music he's working on that essentially tries to give voice to this very same thing. It seems like the universe or the divine is trying to get something through this head. So after weeks of false starts, ripped up draft after ripped up draft, I wrote this small thing. Your home, say that name slow, so I may feel the sun on your fields and hear the rush of your rivers. Your children, sing me the brilliant silver of their names, your treasure. Your God, whisper that name, for such a terrible beauty may shatter the sky. Now, all you have lost, mourn them, mourn each, mourn all, And then I will name my home, my children, my God, and my grief for you. Come, let all these rise together now, the heat of us, the heart of us all, our need of each other, a new prayer. I don't have a clear path, only the intention to try to find and summon the courage to put someone else in the center of things, even though our soles of our feet may be the same color. How much I have to learn, how far I have to go.
I grew up believing that for the most part I was devoid of any racist perspective or views. That was quite a remarkable conclusion to hold, given that I grew up in Texas at a time when everything was segregated and racial cruelties of all kinds were judged acceptable by most white people and endured with minimal protest by persons of color because things got really bad if they dared to protest. Even after being steeped in that culture and those views, that I could still believe I was mostly devoid of racist views is, of course, a testament to the unconscious blindness that a culture of white supremacy encourages. My belief also resulted from having parents who tried mightily to raise children who would not be racist, at least not in the ways present all around us in Texas then. My father insisted that all people, regardless of skin color, were God's children and held equal worth in God's eyes, even if that worth was not present in the eyes of other people. My siblings and I were forbidden to use racial slurs or tell racial jokes on pain of punishment. Because we were surrounded daily by people who made easy use of racial slurs as naturally as breathing and told racial jokes frequently, my father advised us in the presence of such bigotry to remain silent, to ignore it, to walk away. Interesting that he did not urge us to speak out. And I wondered, why not? Was that cowardly of him to counsel us to keep silent and believe that silence was a sufficient protest? Was he being realistic in lifting up silence as perhaps the one form of protest we could probably do without risk of harm to ourselves? And was avoiding harm the most important thing? Or is avoiding harm the choice of one lacking courage? So I reached adulthood believing that I held no racist views as a result of that upbringing. I continued with that belief until a few years ago when we began to be challenged, those of us who enjoy all the privileges of dominant culture, to look closer at ourselves, to notice all the ways we benefit from that culture, and even more to see how we not only benefit but perpetuate it in constant, often unconscious ways. That challenge soon dismantled my tidy belief in my own purity, replacing that belief with uncertainty, guilt, a deep sadness as I slowly started to realize my complicity in the suffering of people of color. All of which means this particular Sunday in the church year, Martin Luther King Sunday, has lost for me the hallowed practices it held during many of my years as a UU minister, when we celebrated all the work of good liberal people in helping achieve a greater measure of racial justice. Instead, I come to this Sunday with more of that uncertainty, guilt, and sadness at the depths of suffering that remain, even as I want to be uplifted by King's insistence that the arc of the universe is slowly but steadily bending towards justice. Those times of remaining silent rather than speaking up are times when courage failed me. Our January services are focused on the theme of courage, a theme which we may habitually associate with actions of great valor done by people in wartime, or extraordinary bravery shown by ordinary people who go to extraordinary lengths to rescue someone, or rare leaders like Reverend Dr. King who give everything, including their own life, in the service of justice. Yet courage is not only writ large, present in bold, memorable deeds done by unusual people. Courage is called for in every day of our lives, as we encounter every day of our lives the patterns of inequity that are woven through everything. And we're invited to not just notice those patterns, not just lament those patterns, but to actually step forward and engage those patterns in ways that might transform them. Each day brings us ongoing challenges, invitations to be courageous. So how are you doing with that? If you look back at the week just ended, when were you courageous and what resulted from your courage? When did courage fail you? We've got some difficult days ahead, King told an overflowing crowd in Memphis, Tennessee on the 3rd of April, when the city's sanitation workers were striking. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. Less than 24 hours after these prophetic words, King was assassinated. Notice how King does not in any way soft pedal the pain of the coming struggle, or suggest that if everybody was just smart and clever enough, that struggle might be avoided. He candidly notes that the possibility of his not living long enough to stay with the struggle is very real. But what he offers as a way into that struggle, a way into the courage to engage that struggle, is the vision of a promised land. That image, of course, is a familiar one from the biblical Exodus account of the journey of the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt towards freedom in the promised land. Recalling that story, that journey took 40 years, much of that time spent in harsh wilderness conditions. It was a journey in which an entire generation died, never even catching a glimpse of the promised land. Moses himself was not allowed to finish the journey. Like King, he died before the journey reached its conclusion. One intent King may have been reaching for in that imagery is challenging the ways in which we count on being able to enjoy the fruits of our efforts, or in this case, the likelihood that many of those striking workers and their supporters were engaging with the struggle with the expectation that if they just hung in there, if they just kept trying, they would get to that promised land of greater freedom. King does reassure them that the promised land is reachable, but as a people. Meaning, as was the case with the Israelites, as became the case for King, not everybody gets there. The commitment to the struggle is made on behalf of the whole people, not just for what any one individual will enjoy. That temptation to put individual satisfaction before the needs of the whole is a key component of dominant culture, and it has repeatedly drawn us into decidedly uncourageous choices. Much like my remaining silent to be sure I was okay, regardless of the impact my silence had on others. Courage gets stronger when I place my actions in the context of relationships. But it will probably pretty much always fail, or at least be weakened, if I turn the focus back on me alone. During the early part of his ministry, King allowed for violent resolution to some issues. For instance, he was willing for those serving as bodyguards for him and his family to carry guns. In fact, he even encouraged them to do so. But the longer and farther he pursued his cause, the more he came to see in his words that if we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, then whatever the cause, it had to be pursued nonviolently. That shift illustrates a pattern that would emerge again and again in King's ministry, a change in direction or strategy that had its inspiration in a vision of some sort. King turned to vision to carry him through obstacles and to do his work. And his vision gave him the courage he needed when fear drew near and going forward seemed impossible. He turned to a vision. He lifted up that vision for others. And the vision became so compelling that otherwise unimaginable actions became possible. Again, there's a shift here from the individual to the whole, from a single worldview to a collective worldview, from what benefits me to what benefits all. And it's that expansive view that calls forth courage. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony. With this faith, we will be able to work together, struggle together, stand up for freedom together. One message that comes through clearly in the present jangling discords of our nation implies that courage is an absence of fear and suggests that when we're afraid, we should just ignore the fear and march ahead. Anything less than continuing to move is to give in to fear in a shameful way. But just how possible is that for any of us, especially when fears are real, strong? Ignoring fear is foolish. Fear is a response that helps us survive as we distinguish between what is safe and what is dangerous. powering through fear is not the course of action of a courageous person, but rather a shallow person who pretends to have no fear and who mistakes courageous action for a lot of noise. King often made it clear that difficult times were ahead and that there would be good reason to be afraid. But he made no mention of denying that fear or powering through it. Instead, after lifting up the fear, he pointed to his transcendent vision of the peace and justice that were ahead and within reach if the protests continued. That vision is what he offered to people to give them courage. Courage comes not by bearing down inside and giving oneself a firm directive to buck up. Simply clenching our spiritual muscles will not suffice to give us courage. Rather, we move into courage by first acknowledging all we cannot do and do not know, by recognizing the difficulties that lie ahead, and then reach for the vision that can help us find our courage. On into adulthood, after too many times of remaining silent when something unfair was unfolding around me, I began to set aside my father's counsel to remain silent as sufficient protest and actually started speaking up. Not loudly, not with a lot of waving of arms and bold declarations, but simply noting the unfairness or unkindness I was seeing. I had the courage to speak up because clarity about what was wrong, and even more clarity about how my silence enabled that wrong to continue, and a bit of vision of how things could be different if we all came together. That was what gave me my voice finally. I have no illusions about achieving some grand change just because I've started to speak up. Like Brian's description in the call to worship, I also discovered, to my dismay, that I land in the minimization range of awareness. I'm hopeful that before I die, I might grow beyond that. I also know that a lifetime of more often being silent than speaking up, a lifetime of placing my individual comfort above the potential discomfort of challenging injustice, will mean my growth is slow and at some point will become costly. But I turn to another vision King offered, that vision of hewing a stone of hope from a mountain of despair, and choose to believe that the times I speak up, other work I do on my own racism, that's crafting one more stone. On this Sunday of looking back at where we've been in our anti-racist work and looking ahead to where we long to arrive, may we be able to see a few stones of hope that all of us have hewn, not dismissing the despair that remains, but not overlooking the stones that are slowly, ever so slowly, accumulating. Each stone we hew is a break in the path of injustice. May those stones keep piling up. Each stone a voice that spoke up rather than remaining silent, and stones that can in time pay the path towards the promised land that King assured us we will one day reach. Amen. Please rise now in body or spirit for our last hymn, number 196, we shall overcome. The words of the benediction are from W.B. Du Bois. The prayer of our souls is a prayer for persistence, not for one good act or one inspired thought, but act after act and thought after thought until, in time, we shape a life worth living. Shalom, salam, namaste, amen.
I invite you to remain standing to sing this last song with me. This song is by Melanie Damore. She's based in Oakland. And she writes, I was inspired by the great movements that were started out of the love for their people, not out of the hatred for others. I've seen her name this song One Foot or Lead with Love. Either one works. So you'll learn the refrain with me, and then we go to the verses. It's back and forth. You sing back what I sing to you. So it goes like this. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. And lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One more time. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't give up hope. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of another and lead with love. One foot in front of another and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of another and lead with love. One foot in front of another and lead with love. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared, and I'm scared too, but here I am, right next to you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with love. Thank you, everyone.